no
What are you
conversation with people
talking
with sexual
about?
experiences. I don't know how to communicate with you, but this is a relatively common thing that comes up where when people are tired or sleeping, another partner tries to have sex with them,
No, I
and then
know
people
Source
that
get
that
different.
part. I
couples
don't
sleep
understand
together?
who is the
Question mark.
retarded child that says that their boyfriend raped them at night
Because when
because
you're
they didn't like
because
them.
when you're
Who
saying
ever told
because
that to you?
because you just did when you said this guy raped me when he stealthed me. Like holy shit! Like slow the fuck down. You're having sex. You consented to
Yeah,
sex.
I
You're
heard
having a
it
good
too,
time,
Malachite.
and then somebody takes the
I
condom off,
think
which
you
is
don't
really
understand the
horrible.
definition of rape.
No, no,
And it's
you're
like
just. Oh shit. Okay.
I
Good
look,
luck. I'll
I'm
stop.
I'm going to I'm going to
He was gonna say
expand
it, dude. It
in all
was
of
coming
French.
out. It was
I
coming out, dude.
do think that the word
This
rape
inner Nebraska.
has
Well,
interesting that you have that narrative.
can
I
I
would
feel like
like
it
to
can
under
come off that way when we are like when you're having a conversation trying to give like good advice and it
Nobody
seems
asked
like
for
everyone
advice.
hold well,
You're
can I just
posting on
finish what
social
I'm saying?
media.
Where
Sure.
people are giving advice, okay, whether you ask for it or not, it's a public platform. And in in response, everyone just like starts loading on what their sexual assault or their rape experience is instead of just like acknowledging like reality in a sense. Where would you like to start that you feel like you were trying to have this conversation, but it I think you said it derailed into a different direction.
Yeah.
So let's try to have the conversation that you wanted to have.
Oh, I think that the thing that I was trying to explain to Irrelevant is that I didn't disagree with a lot of the stuff that you said or that Destiny said or that Irrelevant
Mhm.
was saying. The problem is that I think it's irresponsible for me and other people that have like followings to open that discourse when it's prompted by the stealthing conversation. Because what I was trying to explain to Rella was that um, it's not great optically, and we got into that a little bit, but then it got derailed again. So I agree with all of the stuff that you said. I just think it's highly problematic to say those things when the conversation is actually about stealthing. Do you get what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
Mhm.
I don't think I agree. It sort of feels like you have one direction or one way that you would like the conversation around like combating rape culture on how to
Mhm.
have that. Like there's a specific way, maybe a lot of like prerequisites that have to be said, a lot of areas that have to be touched.
Mhm.
And I feel like on Twitter specifically, where you have like 180 characters and you're really just going by like a moment, a thought, like a story or
Mhm.
whatever, engaging in something specifically. And I think it's fine to comment on that specific part without touching every single other part involved in like rape culture, sex positivity, safe sex,
So I'm really happy you
consent,
said rape
boundaries.
culture because I kept
Mhm.
saying rape culture in the conversation with Riley. And I think that later I got on Zonia's like chat and she was going over the conversation with Riley. And apparently I have a different understanding of what rape culture is than some other people. So I would really appreciate just for my sake if you could tell me what you understand rape culture to be, just so I know we're on the same page, I guess.
I would, well, the idea that comes to mind is
Hmm.
basically the learned behavior of pushing boundaries, not so much I guess like without malicious intent, but almost like sport in a sick way.
Is
Does that
that
make
what
sense
rape
to you?
culture is? That makes perfect sense to me. I'm just making sure. So when I understand what you're saying about me wanting to have
Hmm.
very like one dimensional type of
Well,
like
because
conversation.
yeah,
Hmm.
it seems like people were having a conversation in regards to the stealthing and then giving advice from there, and your input is kind of like, whoa, there's other problems with sex and with rape and stuff like that. You
Hmm.
can't just give that advice
Okay.
and kind of like asking for people to, I don't know,
Yes.
give maybe a book of information on a Twitter.
Yeah, I get that. So what I understand rape culture to be and like the mindset that I came on with and still am to the most part is that rape culture has to do with like um Actually, somebody sent me a perfect, really short sentence. So I'm just going to use that. Normalizing or trivializing sexual violence behaviors as the societal norm is pretty much what I consider rape culture to be.
Yeah, I feel like we're pretty close on that definition.
Awesome.
Yours is probably worded a lot better than my paraphrasing.
I mean, luckily it wasn't mine. Someone smarter than me wrote that, but I think that's a pretty like short description that is pretty good.
Mhm.
So what I was trying to tell Rayleigh, and I could have done a lot better with him too, but he was not very charitable, which I understand, but it's okay. At least that's how I felt. Is that the way we are discussing giving advice and the way we are discussing engaging in sex, some of the rhetoric included in that is helping quote unquote rape culture. When
Oh.
Destiny hears about stealthing and then his reaction is like, let's talk about healthy sexual boundaries, that leap into that demonstrates that in this person's mind, stealthing is just another aspect of like sex, which is not. It's different, right? So when there's a jump between let's talk about stealthing and now let's talk about healthy sexual engagement, what that demonstrates,
Mhm.
I think that's very disturbing that we can make that jump so easily. Do you get where I'm coming from?
I wouldn't agree because I feel like the tweet that people were engaging with is somebody who, in that first tweet specifically, said that this has happened to them several times, and
Yes.
for like men to do better. And I think in that regard, then we would have the conversation about how to have safer, better sex. And
So
even,
can we talk about the tweet?
Mhm.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll talk
Okay.
about whatever.
So, in regards to the tweet, whenever I talk to people, they point out two things. The fact that she said it was awkward, and they think people like shouldn't, I guess, have that sex if they think those types of interactions are awkward, which again
Mhm.
is problematic, and we'll go down that route. But like,
Wait, do
okay,
you want to just touch that first?
sure. It's just an extension of what I just said like a minute ago.
Mhm.
That if she says it's awkward. So if I'm really get that example, he was like, okay, let's say you're doing anal with someone, and then you realize that their dick is too big, and you're not down for that anymore. If it's too
Mhm.
awkward for you to say anything about that, that's probably not good, and maybe you should like reevaluate finding better ways to be able to communicate that. Right? That's a legitimate example where I think that advice is very appropriate. You probably shouldn't let a person penetrate your asshole if they're too big for it and you're not down with that, you know? So
Yeah,
I
well,
agree with that.
because the
Mhm.
the story that he lines up is you are wanting your ass penetrated. You just didn't understand how long or maybe
Circumstances
how
change.
girthy.
You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
want it anymore, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and if you
And
can't
even
assert that
though,
you don't want it anymore,
yeah,
that would be a problem, right?
so like the feeling awkward is knowing that, wait, I've said yes, and then wait, but this is actually too much, and
Yeah,
are you uncomfortable taking that yes back? That's what like.
exactly, right?
And if you are uncomfortable, you probably should reevaluate if you are prepared for casual sex because your
Yes,
communication is not good.
I
So we
agree with
agree
you.
on that. Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
but you don't find it to be alarming for stealthing.
exactly. The too big of a penis to go in my asshole thing. Valid example. Let's talk about advice. Let's talk about boundary establishment, all that crap.
Hmm.
Totally appropriate. It's not appropriate in the context of stealthing, which is the argument that me and everyone in the bottom row and people that agree with me are trying to say. And I think
So
you disagree. So,
I would disagree. So I find that the first one that we talked about, which is anal, penis too big, maybe too long, maybe too girthy, who the fuck knows, he gifted, okay?
yeah.
Um, that one sounds more difficult to raise my concerns with than stealthing.
Okay.
And that's what I have a problem with here because it feels like we are telling people, we keep reiterating it violated consent, it violated consent, it violated consent. And it's almost like now the word consent is as loaded and giving the same visual of violence as every time that we say like rape or sexual assault.
We have two different ways of viewing why people think that consent is important, I guess. Rayleigh was not saying so explicitly, but I definitely felt like the way he sees it, and maybe I actually think he did say that explicitly, that the the thing that we should be scared about is the propensity for violence, basically.
When someone says that, like, and when I argue or when I say, hey, we're loading this to make it sound like there's a threat of violence, that's more so to be able to engage with, is it reasonable for this person to have voiced concern? Is it reasonable for this person to have frozen up? Is it reasonable for this person to, after the fact, removed from the situation, feel like they would avoid a conflict in lieu of articulating
Well,
what they liked or didn't like out of the intercourse? And I feel like when it comes to stealthing, that threat of violence isn't there. It's an act of disrespect and disregard for another human being, which I know can feel so violating as a woman. I understand that, but that is not violence.
Yes. So, and that's what I was saying, right? And I would love to ask you a question once we're done clarifying this, but I think we're right at the head of it. So I'm going to keep going with this.
Okay.
When I said that I feel like Riley and you are very concerned with like the aspect of violence, it seems that you think that consent, like the importance of like all these practices and all the critique that we give to people is based on this notion of like, if you say no to this, how likely is this person to then violently enforce themselves onto you?
Yeah. So
And, mhm,
fuck, I want to pull to a different analogy outside of
sure,
like sex, okay?
sure.
Because this is what advice that I would give like for mental health. There are a
Hmm.
lot of people who feel like, man, I need to go to a psychiatrist. I know I'm just loaded with anxiety right now. I feel like I need to be medicated. And you know, I feel like the way that we talk about mental health and anxiety and depression and all of this today, it almost gets glorified. It almost gets put in people's mind like, yeah, maybe I should be on Xanax too. And sometimes you want to sit back, talk with people because having emotions is just very natural. And sometimes when you feel anxious, it's a reasonable response for the situation that you're in. Do you have a test like in 2 days and you haven't studied for it well and you don't know when you're going to have time to study for it? So you're feeling anxious, you're feeling nervous, you're having trouble sleeping. That's actually pretty fucking normal. And that's something that you can learn healthy coping mechanisms to overcome that before like you think I got to go to a psychiatrist, I need to start getting medicated. Oh my God. When I talk about stealthing, is this a threat of violence for you? I'm
Yeah.
just more so thinking, what is a normal response that you can have here? I think it's okay for someone to feel traumatized, to feel frozen, but I would say that that's not a normal response to a violation of consent that would not be violent. Does
Okay.
that make sense to you? And that's why
Mhm.
that's why when I gave advice in regards to you should be able to communicate that after the fact. A healthy response should not feel traumatizing, frozen, and silent when you're home.
Okay.
I don't think that that's normal. And I think that's indicative of being traumatized, which maybe is because of it happening 2 previous times, maybe even leading back to the first violent rape that they had described, which just for me is a sign that you shouldn't engage in casual sex. You're not actually having the rational response to a nonviolent violation of your consent.
Okay, that makes sense to me, and there are a few things you said, and I think all of them are incredibly important to address. I'm gonna
Okay.
try to remember all of them, but okay,
I'll repeat if you need. Sorry. I know I put a lot.
it's all good. I think what I'm gonna touch on first is this thing. So I asked really this, and I know Destiny answered me this, so I'll ask you. So when you're saying, hey, you probably shouldn't engage in casual sex, when would you say that this person under your purview could start engaging in in sex at all, if they ever could? When would you revoke your advice?
I That's up for the person.
Okay.
Like, I'm not even in the position to know if they need to take a step back from casual sex. I'm an outside observer observer looking at the exterior facts that have been given to me. I can't even decide if they're true or not, right? People can lie to you on Twitter.
Yeah, but that was
I
a
don't
big
even.
argument. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
Mhm.
like a
No,
lot
no,
of
you're
what
fine.
we tried to explain, like on the panel, or I won't talk for the other people, but for me, a lot of my critique of Destiny was the fact that you just don't have any of this information. And when I kept telling him that his advice is garbage, I was like, how do you know she didn't take a break? How do you know she didn't examine this? How do you know she's not examining it right now? Those are a lot of assumptions you're making. So you're giving
So,
this advice, but it's
mhm.
basically useless.
So I I agree and disagree with you, like, at the same time here. You
Okay.
don't know this person. Who knows if what they're saying is true? Who knows the facts? Who knows if they need it, if they've already done the introspection? Who the fuck knows, okay?
Hmm.
That's not what anybody is actually concerned about on Twitter.
Okay.
We see this story. For me, it's a learning moment. It's an opportunity to teach. It's something I saw a lot of engagement in that tweet. I saw a lot of engagement in the retweet. This person is not the only one who sees themselves in this situation. And so for the other people, I don't know if they have the same like the same numbers of people violating their consent, if they're stuck in the same patterns, if they're stuck in these sorts of loops. That's who I'm talking to.
Okay.
And I feel I understand why some people would be like, hey, don't use this person's trauma as someone else's learning opportunity. I would disagree.
Okay.
Trauma really does suck, but even if you are stuck in it, there is a chance that someone else can learn through it. And I think that's something to take advantage of.
Okay. And I think a lot of what you're saying is like very like hinges on the fact that this is Twitter and you see it as Twitter.
Yeah,
Um
definitely.
okay, good. So that's like a good thing for me to keep in mind because I understand like the perspective that you're coming from. Because I am very like whether I'm on panel or on VC or in a chat room somewhere, I always care. I don't care about chat right now. I care about you. Like you're the only person that is on
Hmm.
my mind right now. And that's how I engage. And I forget that not everyone are like that. I forget that when me and Riley are talking, he has an audience and he has a chat room and it's not quite the same. And that's something that I need to take into consideration more. So I need to like adjust my perspective on that. When I mentioned that I think actually Destiny's and your approach are very infantilizing, I said that because when you're saying, for me, this is an opportunity to teach, I honestly, if you're being like sexually harmed repeatedly and you have not at any point thought, hey, maybe I should figure out if I could minimize this, then I would argue that maybe you do like need like maybe help and support and like serious like people around you to help you through that navigate. But I assume that adult capable people are already doing that. So the
Oh, no.
assumption that women, and I'm going to tell you why, and this kind of connects to another point you made, right?
Okay.
If when we're saying this woman is being sexually assaulted repeatedly, I'm not talking about the real quote unquote rape, the violent rape. I'm talking about the stealthing thing, and it keeps happening,
Hmm.
right? And then
Consent
we're
violated. Yeah.
yeah. Um, when I'm trying to get this answer out of people. So if she doesn't want to be stealthed, which we assume that she doesn't because she asked for a condom, and then she can't assert her boundary in that. Let's say she can assert her boundary, but she won't. Okay, like she
Hmm.
won't. It's not like she freezes or whatever. She just doesn't. What is the incentive? Are we now saying that people are trying to get like sexual trauma points online? Is that like a serious
No.
narrative?
No,
Okay.
that's two different things going on.
Okay.
Uh, Sexual trauma points online is removed from this person completely. Even removed from this situation is just something that has happened on Twitter. Um, Not even just Twitter, on Twitch too. I can't tell you how much I was encouraged in my early days to like show my scars, like not like physical scars, but
I was
like
gonna ask if you have physical scars. I'm so sorry.
I mean, I do, but I also don't show them.
Yeah,
Um,
I wouldn't show my scars on. I think that would be
but
inappropriate. Yeah.
it's coming from both sides.
Mhm.
And for me, the hardest side to deal with are the people that I'm trying to help, the people that I empathize with the most.
Mhm.
And I always find myself facing a woman or even a fucking man who is just like infantilizing another woman that will tell me, you don't understand. You've never been assaulted. You wouldn't understand rape until it happens to you. Like,
Yeah.
excuse me, I do not have to show my fucking scars to understand, to empathize, to give good advice. I'm someone I've lived through it. I've survived through it. I've done the hard work. And I now engage in casual sex very freely, very confidently, with really good communication.
Yeah.
And I feel like even at the end of that panel, I don't think people like grasped how important it is to communicate after sex happens. I feel like after sex happens, that's one of the moments where if you do not have if you struggle with creating boundaries and even just respecting them for yourselves, being able to assert those after the fact is a way to build that confidence. And it's also a way to just like build a stronger connection and a stronger respect for yourself
to properly
and
say
the other
your
person.
name? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's Cherry. Cherry, like
so just like Cherry. Okay, good. So I'll just have it. The thing is, and this is where you and I will always like butt heads, which is the problem.
It's okay.
If the panel was talking about two different things. I was talking about stealthing, and you're talking about sex. And I think you agree with me that stealthing isn't sex.
Can't happen. But stealthing can't happen without sex. So that's in the same conversation.
But that's where, and this is the line that I draw that you're not willing to. So once sex develops into, you can also get like unironically violently raped and it will start with sex, right? But we wouldn't say if you were then violently raped that you should still communicate your needs during and after. Because there's a line there. And you're saying, well, stealthing is different because stealthing is not going to result in the same trauma and in the same responses and in the same
it
like
doesn't have the same threat of violence.
Yes,
is what I said.
Good. Okay, so I think that that because you don't see that same like threat of violence, you then see stealthing, or it comes out from what you're saying is that you see stealthing as just an unhealthy extension of sex. And I'm very much unwilling to engage with that because I think it's harmful.
Okay. So I feel like I explained this well earlier.
Okay.
I would take someone's ability to reassert their boundary depending on what was happening. So if they are being violently raped, they're at gunpoint, they're having a knife held to them, like I would not expect the reassertion of boundary that it would be a reasonable response, a reasonable like traumatic response to freeze. I do not grant or I do not acknowledge that same reasonable response in regards to being stealthed. That's not reasonable. It's not reasonable to feel under the same threat as if someone had a gun to your head for a guy, or for a guy to take off his condom, or a woman to find out like the woman didn't use birth control. Like as much as I would tell a woman you should be able to articulate to a guy after the fact when you see the condom wasn't on, when you see the condom wasn't used. Like, I mean, my exact thing would be, what the fuck? Like, just,
okay.
I'm clearly visibly upset. And maybe it's not even immediate like that. I'm pretty quick to communicate. But the same goes for a guy. If he finds out later on that she wasn't on birth control, you finished in her. Yeah, you should tell the girl, hey, this is fucked up.
Okay.
I feel like because it's not a violent thing, that maybe you feel like, well, the damage is done, so nobody really needs to say anything, and they feel like disrespected, having been violated, and you can't expect them to say anything.
I understand. Can I give you a hypothetical so I can make sure that I understand what you're saying? Because I think I do, but I just want to clarify. So let's say there's a guy, they are 6'5", okay? Is that how you say heights? 6'5".
Yeah, 6'5".
Okay. They are 6'5", they are 300 pounds, jacked as shit, and they're walking on the street. They go into this alley, and then somebody just comes to them and mugs them, but no gunpoint. It's just like this person is just like, hey, give me your money, okay? And they're trying to mug them. They're trying to like reach out for their pockets and take their wallet or whatever. If that mugging takes place when there wasn't a weapon, and it's pretty clear that this Giga Chad could physically overpower the mugger, if they don't, if the mugger just succeeds and just reaches into their pocket and takes their wallet, do you think that that's unreasonable from the side of the Giga Chad and he should have physically overpowered the mugger?
I actually, does he have reason to believe that there's a weapon?
No.
Then I would think that maybe they're freezing. They're probably not equipped to deal with conflict or something.
I agree.
Yeah, I would.
So would you then have a problem with that Giga Chad calling themselves a victim of mugging?
No.
So they
still
are
a victim.
Still a victim of mugging. Okay. But they did not reasonably respond to the situation.
Correct.
Okay.
Because they had a trauma response, which would be irrational. That's what trauma is. It's an irrational response.
I agree with you.
But they would still be a victim.
So I think that if we understand that trauma responses are irrational and would cause you to behave in suboptimal ways that could help you through a situation, then take it into
irrationally help you through a situation.
Of course, irrationally, but we agreed that like the point of the trauma response is that it is going to lead you to the less rational act, probably. Like freezing is not even a choice that you make; it's just something that happens, right?
But okay, so there's a normal response to freeze, right? And then you have the traumatic, like the irrational need to freeze. And I would say like the large guy freezing is irrational, but it's still like traumatic and he's still a victim. It's something that you would probably recommend like therapy.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, right? So do you see where my hypothetical I feel like applies to the case with the stealthing? Or would you
not
like
even a little bit? I'm so confused.
Okay, awesome. Then I wasn't sure, so I'm glad I asked. So I think that in our example, I think that you indicated, hey, there's no threat of physical violence from this guy. He's stealthing you, but you don't have a reasonable reason to suspect he might violently assault you. Therefore, when you're having this irrational, unreasonable response of not quote unquote asserting your boundary again in that moment, that is a problem that you should look into. Okay.
That's exactly what we were saying. Yes.
Yes. So what I did in my hypothetical, I said, let's say the guy is stronger than the mugger, right? And that way removing the violence threat dynamic, right? And then I asked you, in this situation, if the Giga Chad, like freezes, has a trauma response, have some other psychological reason that he's not stopping the mugging, they're still a victim of it, right?
Katie, you understand that no one's saying that they are not a victim of being stealthed, and that no one's saying it's their fault either.
I do understand that, but when we're then judging the way they behaved in that situation, we are expecting a lot more from a person who clearly wasn't able to do that in the moment.
But we perfectly judged the Giga Chad who got assaulted, right? We said, well, that's probably irrational.
And he should look into it, right?
We would recommend therapy.
Yes,
and
we would.
The same was recommended to the girl who was stealthed several times.
Do you think that the Giga Chad should no longer go into alleys then until he gets therapy?
The difference here is the Giga Chad will probably avoid it himself, because that is the normal response. But I feel like in a world where we are encouraging women, own your sexuality, don't worry, the world is dangerous, but we will tell the rapers not to rape. You good. Get back out there.
Okay.
Sometimes people need help to pull them out of a very bad toxic cycle that they don't even realize that they're in. And that's very common with sex, with toxic relationships, abusive relationships. We know this.
So you
And
really,
it's very
so
possible
maybe,
that
Mhm.
hold on, because it's also very possible the Giga Chad, he's gonna feel like there's the other route where he doesn't avoid alleys, and now he only goes to alleys looking for fights. Like, people do not always come away from bad instances with the appropriate response. And I feel like
I agree.
that person, especially later on when they tweeted, in spite of everyone's response, I'm gonna go have lots of casual sex this weekend. Imagine that you just embolden this person to continue down this terrible cycle or this bad pattern because you feel like, no, people shouldn't be mean to her on Twitter. How awful.
The issue that I have with this argument is that it again relies on this assumption that um, this person is basically seeking out to get hurt. And the reason why that assumption is made is because that happened to her with 3 different people or 2 different people. I think the third one was the
No,
violent rape. Yeah.
you are putting on more than anybody is putting on here. No
Okay.
one's wondering what her intent is. No one's wondering what if
Wait,
she's
when you
out here
give
having
advice,
sex
hey,
looking
don't
for
go have
love.
casual sex, you are assuming that she wants and will do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't give that
Hold
advice.
on.
If she told you I'm celibate now, you wouldn't give that advice.
She didn't say she's celibate now.
I know.
No,
I'm saying that.
hold on, that's
Mhm.
not the same thing that I just critiqued here, because
Okay,
you said
sorry.
it's like that I'm implying she's going out to get hurt. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying she's trying to recklessly have sex. I'm not saying she's out there having sex to find love. I'm not saying
Mhm.
she's in a committed relationship. Literally taking the tweet that I saw and engaging with that information. I'm not looking for more. I'm not looking to cut out less. I'm literally just engaging with that tweet. And I feel like you want a whole like monologue beforehand. Maybe you want me to do like a research paper, put
Mhm.
on like grab Scooby-Doo and like go into her fucking house and find the shit, unmask the bad guy. That's like, no, I'm not going to do a research paper on a 180 character tweet. And I think that that's so unreasonable to expect of people on Twitter. I will not think that the person who tweets out is lying to me. I will not think that after they've tweeted out that there's more that they needed to say and that I just had to pull it out of them. No, I'm going to assume, as the grown people that we are on Twitter, that when you tweet something, that's exactly what you meant to put out on the platform.
Okay. So if what she tweeted was, someone stealthed me, I was awkward, this happened to me with another person in the past, men stopped doing it. And then are you saying that you shouldn't say, oh, that really sucked that you were stealth because everyone will already say it, so you want to say something new?
No.
Okay.
I'm literally looking at a situation that looks like a red flag, and I just want to give like the appropriate response. I think it's fine that some people saw that tweet and
Mhm.
they just want to be supportive and
Okay.
uplift. I think there's room for all types of people here.
Okay.
And I'm not that person, as somebody who has experienced shit and who really wished I had more reasonable voices in my life.
Mhm.
I will always be that reasonable voice. I can't fucking help it. And I absolutely can't be shamed out of it. It's impossible for me now.
Mhm.
But I make room for people like you to exist. I'm not going to shame you.
Mhm.
Destiny's going to be a bit of an ass. He's going to call you like a rape creator.
That's fine.
But I think that there's
I
definitely
think the same
women.
of him, so it's fine.
I think he's a nice guy. I think he's got the right message.
I think he can be nice when he wants to,
doesn't
but
have
he
the
first
tact.
has to decide that he respects you, and I think that's pretty shitty.
It's very hard to respect people who look for the worst in what you're saying.
Okay.
But I will say, like, there's space for you. There's like a need for you, okay? Not every person wants the advice. Some people just need support in this way, and that's okay. But I feel like we can be better allies if, while I don't like tear you apart for the way that you are just being like a blanket support, that maybe you don't tear me apart when I'm just being like realistic and honest and mature about what sex is and how to engage in it safely. Like, we are supposed to complement each other. We're not supposed to be the people fighting.
Yeah,
And I feel like
and I
while
think what I
we're both on the
appreciate-
progressive positive side, like that's all that panel was.
I think what I appreciate about talking to you is that we can disagree and still be very respectful of each other. And I think I see that as an extension of feminism, because I know I have a hard time disagreeing with women, even when I think they're wrong, because I don't want to put them down or like minimize their perspectives.
That's that's a problem in itself.
Yeah, that's very
Women
infantilizing.
can be
I agree.
bad.
Yeah.
And women can be, never mind. But it's fine.
Let me
It's
tell
a
you,
problem
this is
that
a
you've acknowledged,
microcosm,
and that's
right?
fine.
So the reason why I'm saying that is because I have identified that in myself. I am aware of it, and I'm trying to work through it, you know? So I agree
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
cool.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
So again, and this is going to always come back to it. If you just think that the issue with like why raising your voice is impossible during stealthing, like if the issue is if there's no threat of physical violence, a woman does not have a quote unquote reasonable reason to not assert her boundaries, then I think that's just something that we will always have a contention over. Because I think there are many reasons why someone won't be able to establish their boundaries, even if the threat of physical violence isn't present. And I don't look for reasonable reasons why people didn't do something in a traumatizing situation. Because I think, and maybe this is optimistic of me, but if it's an adult person engaging in sex, even sex that went wrong, I assume the adult person did whatever they could in that moment, what they could, not what they should have, to help themselves. And if they hadn't, then that's something that hopefully they'll be able to look into and improve.
So here's the problem is like, even looking at that final act of removing the condom and not wanting to be critical of the woman, you remove so many instances where the problem could lie. And I will say, a lot of people don't like to talk about partner selection because that feels victim blamey. But we do understand that we tell people, if you're in an abusive relationship after relationship, chances are you suck at picking a partner and you suck at picking people who respect you. And maybe part of them not respecting you is you not respecting yourself and really setting the tone for them to make it that much easier for them. And
I get where you're coming from. I think that's valid. But if I had a friend like that, and again, this is a bit different because you treat Twitter differently. But if I were to bring that up with them, it would have to be in a very specific context. I would not like if they were talking about getting beaten up by their husband, I would not be like, maybe you should pick better partners.
It's taking the same advice that's like, hey, men don't rape, men do better. Okay?
Okay.
And women, where are you finding the men? Are you finding them in a frat house? Are you finding them on 8 Mile? Are they with like Eminem in the dumpster with the fucking Wonder Bread? Like what are we doing?
The men who stealth?
The men who push boundaries. We do know that like rape culture is very prevalent in fraternities.
Yeah.
So I think it's worth questioning stuff like that.
Yes, it's worth questioning stuff like that for me in a
or
general
even
discourse.
Educating other people. Yeah.
I agree. I think, and this is something speaking about that is good. And as I said to you, and really on the panel, I don't have an issue discussing it generally. It just can't be prompted off this specific case. So I wouldn't be willing to engage in it then. And
well, you engaged with it, Katie.
No, I engaged with it in the sense that I rejected the assumption that we can ever take the sexual assault and turn it into, oh, this is just bad sex where you should have done something differently. That I will
No,
not do.
but that's not anything anybody did. And I really wish you would stop call him an asshole. Tell him he's bad at rhetoric. Tell him he went about everything the wrong way.
Cherry.
But to take the advice that he gave and paint it like he's somehow saying what you just said, like, oh, she's at fault, or that she let this happen. Like, no, that is not what happened.
Cherry, I talk to you right now. I talk to you right now.
Yes, I know. You talk to me, and you've agreed with almost everything I've said.
Yes.
I have not said anything.
Yeah.
I have not said a position that's different than Destiny's.
Okay, so do you want to talk about Destiny, or because I was addressing you right now, so I can explain to you why I think what I said is valid to what you said. I already had my talk with Destiny.
No, but if you could say what Destiny says that's different than what I say, I would like to know that.
What he says right now, he kind of backtracked on a lot of things, so. I think that the advice of I heard two things about your story, and I'm going to tell you to not have casual sex is useless advice. So there you go.
Okay, so you don't agree with me.
I think I agree with you when you say it differently.
No, I feel like you agree with me, but the second I add Destiny to the pool, it's you've got a trauma response, Katie. You hear Destiny and you think that it might be his opinion, and you're backing away from it. It's irrational. And I think you need to take a step back from the fucking discourse. I don't think you're emotionally mature enough to engage in any of the content or advice that he's saying. And you're letting all of the good advice I say and that you agree with, you're letting it just fucking die and fester, and you're letting it poison just because it comes from his mouth.
I am fine explaining to you why I think what you said is wrong, but if you want to talk about, I mean, I probably should not talk about
I don't think it's gonna.
So
yeah, we're just gonna loop from here. I really did appreciate the conversation, but I refuse to be like one of the people on this platform that is oh yeah, I'm going to say the same thing Destiny says, and everyone can reward me for it, and I'll throw him under the bus. No, he's like an asshole. He says everything ass backwards, but we literally have the same takes, and you're willing to, I don't know, go slow with me and understand where I'm coming from, and you completely shut down for him. That's like me. I understand where that comes from because like the crassness and like the meanness come first, but you're poisoning the well for like a really good ally, and that sucks.
That's fine that you feel that way.
I'll unpoison it.
I'm sure you will. I appreciate the time.
You have a good one, Katie.
Bye.
Fuck, I'm such a simp.